But first, from that stunning show of solidarity in Paris, dozens of world leaders marched arm in arm yesterday to send a clear message that terrorism will never win. It was remarkable, not only in size, but in the fact that some of these people rarely agree on anything, yet they managed to put aside everything for a few short hours in the city of Paris to walk the streets and remember the victims of France's brutal terror attacks. And not a single high-level United States representative was in the group. Tonight, the White House taking serious heat for that.
If there's ever a picture that says our policy is leading from behind, that's it.
Even the left-leaning New York Daily News saying, quote, "You let the world down." And then there is this from the New York Post. "Sorry, Charlie, Obama's team goes AWOL at Paris rally against terror." It is an idea that was echoed by MSNBC's Andrea Mitchell.
That was a stunning absence. Just look at the pictures of the Unity March Sunday. 40 world leaders, including all of Europe, even Israel's Benjamin Netanyahu, along with his adversary, Palestinian President Abbas, but not President Obama, not Joe Biden, or anyone from the cabinet.
The Politico website called it, quote, Barack Obama's French kiss-off in their headline, saying the president's decision to skip the Paris march raised eyebrows. While Forbes' headline reads, "Shame on President Obama for skipping the Paris Unity rally against terrorism." A point CNN's Jake Tapper addressed with the president's former spokesman, Jay Carney.
Certainly you'll grant the point that there's something wrong when the good wife had higher Obama administration representation with a cameo from Valerie Jarrett, then this very important rally, perhaps the most important rally in Europe in a generation.
That stings. While Aaron David Miller, the former State Department official under both Republican and Democratic administrations, tweeted this: "Not an excuse in universe can explain why U.S. failed to send to Paris a more visible representative than Attorney General Eric Holder," noting MIAs including the President and Mrs. Obama, Secretary of State John Kerry, Vice President Joe Biden. None of these people were available for this. By this afternoon, he writes, even the White House itself will acknowledge the mistake.
Some have asked whether or not the United States should have sent someone with a higher profile than the ambassador to France. And I think it's fair to say that we should have sent someone with a higher profile to be there.
Our chief White House correspondent Ed Henry reports tonight. Ed, good evening.
Good to see you, Martha. What's particularly curious is the case of Attorney General Eric Holder. As you noted, he was in Paris this weekend, but decided to skip the rally. His aides say that's because he wanted to get back to Washington by Sunday afternoon after he taped 4 Sunday morning talk shows back here in the U.S. Unclear what he needed to get back to in Washington. They haven't answered our questions about what else he had to do. Josh Earnest today at his briefing insisted that the White House wanted to send someone, perhaps even the president. So I pressed him, what went wrong?
Why didn't you?
Well, Ed, I've sort of tried to describe to you exactly the situation here. That we're talking about a march that came together with essentially 36 hours notice, and a march that occurred outdoors with an obviously very large number of people who participated.
How do you explain then that the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, he made it there? He's a huge target, obviously, unfortunately.
Well, I will allow the Israelis to discuss what security precautions they had in place.
We haven't gotten an accounting of what the president did Sunday.
I haven't spoken to the president about what he did yesterday. I guess I prepared for a lot of questions today, but I did not prepare for a question based on what the president was actually doing.
Like on the Attorney General, he was in that city, so there's no issue of security was already in place. How could he not attend?
And I'm not aware of the details of the Attorney General's schedule for yesterday. What I'm telling you is that, yes, we believe somebody with a higher profile should have been asked to attend.
Now, you heard Josh Earnest repeatedly cite security as a reason for not sending the president, perhaps the vice president, while a Secret Service official did tell us it would have been a huge challenge at the last minute to send such a high-profile official. They say they could have done it, but they were never asked, that there was no ask of the agency, put together a plan, so the White House did not really consider it that seriously, Martha.
No, so then how would the White House know that it would be a security problem if there was no request? Ed, thank you very much. Interestingly, a lot of the harshest criticism that we heard today for the White House came from media outlets that are usually tend to be sympathetic to the president. But it was also a moment for some potential 2016 contenders to get on the record on this one. Here is Senator Ted Cruz.
Where was the president? Where was the vice president? Where was the Secretary of State? Where was the Attorney General who had been there moments before, but chose to get on a plane and fly back home?
Mark Thiessen, former chief speechwriter for President George W. Bush, an American Enterprise Institute fellow, and Washington Post columnist. Mark, good to have you here with us this evening. You know, obviously, when all of those people that were just listed were not available or couldn't make it, this was a deliberate decision. This was not an oversight. Clearly, it was a very deliberate decision not to participate. So how do you explain this?
Well, this is the same president who went to a fundraiser the day after an American ambassador was killed in Benghazi. This is the same president who went golfing after an American was beheaded by ISIS. So he doesn't adjust his schedule for American victims of terrorism. Why would he change his schedule for the French?
But, you know, it seems to me that there's a fatherly role that comes along with being president, that there's a healing role that comes along with it. And in all of those instances that you name, the president sort of did not step up into that role and say, do not be afraid. I think of the people standing up in Paris with the not afraid signs. And it made me think this afternoon of the moment when President George W. Bush, during the World Series in October of 2001, while the city was still literally burning and the security concerns were rampant, did this. I was in New York then. People were afraid to get on the subways. They were afraid to cross the bridges. And that must have given the Secret Service folks some gray hairs. But President Bush was not going to be stopped from that, was he?
Absolutely he wasn't. And he was in ground zero just a couple of days after 9/11, standing on top of the rubble. And this was at a time, by the way, if you think about it, when we didn't know exactly who had attacked us. We knew it was al-Qaeda, but we didn't know who KSM was. We didn't know who the mastermind of 9/11 was. We didn't know if there were other sleeper cells in the country planning follow-on attacks. It was in the context of the anthrax attacks and all the other things that were going on. So it was a very dangerous time for America. So I just don't buy the security argument that the Obama administration is making. But let's give them that. You know, Eric Holder doesn't go. He's in Paris. Where's John Kerry? I mean, you had 40 world leaders. You know, if you talk about symbolism, a million people marching behind 40 world leaders walking arm in arm saying we are going to combat Islamic radicalism together, and the U.S. is completely absent from that picture. How can we be absent from that statement of global unity against the people, the same people who attacked us on September 11, 2001?
And these other world leaders, you know, what we've heard from Canada, what we've heard from David Cameron, they don't seem to have a hard time constructing sentences to call this what they believe it is, Mark.
No, exactly. And apparently the French don't. I mean, when the socialist prime minister of France is tougher on Islamic radicalism than the American administration, you know we have a problem. I mean, this administration won't call it Islamic radicalism. You know, they're having, in a few weeks, they're having a summit on combating violent extremism. We're not at war with violent extremism. I mean, you know what violent extremists are? They're eco-terrorists. They're animal liberation terrorists. They're white supremacists. You've got Colombian extremists. You've got Peruvian extremists. We're not at war with those people. We're at war with Islamic radicalism. And you cannot defeat an enemy if you won't even name it.
Mark, thank you very much. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Martha.
So the administration did spend time today talking up a new summit on defeating what it calls radical extremists that you just heard Mark mention. The State Department's Marie Harf is here on what exactly those plans are. Plus, new fallout tonight from the brand new terror threat from ISIS to